Welcome to Couples Therapy in 7 Words. I am your co-host, Judy Alexander, and I'm here with my husband, Dr. Bruce Chalmer.
Well, hello, Judy, and hello, listeners. This is our first time doing this on video as well as audio, so of course we'll be looking for your comments to see, how do you like that? And the reason we're doing it this way is because we have a delightful interview, which we also videoed as well as just did the audio, with Susan Bratton, who is a sex advisor and very prolific author and just a whole lot of fun to talk to. We've already done this interview. And so I think it's going to be a great treat for you, and we're looking forward to sharing it with you. Before we do that, I would like to invite you all to do the things that people do to let people know about our podcast. Rate us and comment and tell your friends, of course, all that sort of stuff. And the other thing, which I think we'll keep it brief just so we can get to our interview quickly, is a little commercial for my book, which does get mentioned in the interview, by the way. Mm-hmm. And thanks to Susan for that, too. She did her homework. I was impressed.
She did.
Yeah. The name of the book is
Reigniting the Spark, Why Stable Relationships Lose Intimacy and How to Get It Back.
And it is available anywhere you get books. And the book is based on the 7 words referred to in our podcast title, Couples Therapy in 7 Words. And the 7 words are...
Be kind, don't panic, and have faith.
And you will be hearing those words come up in the context of our discussion with Susan Bratton. So, without further ado, let us turn it over to the discussion. We'll switch over to that, and you'll see Judy introducing Susan, and we'll take it from there, and we'll see you after the interview.
Our guest today is Susan Bratton. Susan is a best-selling author and publisher of 34 books and programs, including Sexual Soulmates, Relationship Magic, Revive Her Drive, Ravish Him, Steamy Sex Ed, The Passion Patch, Hormone Balancing, and Hot to Trot. She is the CEO of 2 companies, The 20, a supplement company, and Personal Life Media, which publishes her books and programs. Susan has been featured in the New York Times and on CNBC and The Today Show, as well as frequent appearances on ABC, CBS, The CW, Fox, and NBC. Her many videos can be found on her YouTube channel, Better Lover. Susan describes herself as an orgasmonaut, a sexual biohacker, and a trusted hot sex advisor to millions. Susan, welcome to Couples Therapy in 7 Words.
I'm so happy to be here with the 2 of you. I love to collaborate with therapists because I'm not one. I'm the opposite. I'm the person who teaches you how to transform having sex into making love.
Well, I just want to point out, I'm not a therapist either. I'm an educator, and that's what I like about you and what I've seen of your stuff, because I look at you as an educator. So
that's what I feel like.
Bruce is the sex. He's not the sex.
I'm not even a sex therapist.
No, he's
per se. I'm a couples therapist.
So he's the therapist. I'm the educator, and you, I have all those qualities as well.
And we love to all reignite the spark.
Indeed.
In our way, in our different ways.
Exactly.
Funny you should mention. Yes, indeed. Yeah.
So I'd like to start off by asking you how you got into teaching people about sex.
Yeah, well, like everyone, our greatest wound becomes our greatest gift. My husband and I are celebrating 30 years together this November. And this month, we're hitting 28 years of our anniversary. But about a decade into our relationship, we were a very successful Silicon Valley couple with a beautiful little girl, and our intimate life had gone missing. Not for my husband's lack of trying, but just for my lack of being interested in it. And I started out loving to have sex with my husband. It was one of the reasons I married him, was that for finally I felt like I'd found a guy that I was good in bed with, and that we had a good opportunity to have a good intimate connection in our marriage. But after a decade of not being able to have orgasms from intercourse, but having intercourse with my husband, I just didn't want to do it anymore. And I was avoiding him, and I was just down to giving him mercy sex. And he was just beside himself. He was so upset with me. And he emotionally checked out of the marriage. And we ended up just living a parallel platonic raise our child type of a life. And we were in our late 30s, early 40s when this was kind of all happening. And we saw all of our friends getting divorced. And because we were a successful Silicon Valley couple and all our friends were gainfully employed, we knew it wasn't a money issue, which is usually one of the two problems, sex and money, they tend to
Right.
be the ones, right? And we thought, well, our friends' marriages are all dropping like flies, and we don't want to do that. What can we do? How can we fix this? We started going to therapy, and that was wonderful. We dealt with some of my traumas that I'd had, but it wasn't really enough for us. And because we live in the San Francisco Bay Area, which is kind of the nexus of the sexual revolution and human potential movement, we had access to a lot of sex workshops. And our issue was sex. So we decided to start going to these workshops. We did tantric workshops, orgasmic meditation, Human Awareness Institute, many levels of them, all kinds of things. And the minute we started going to these workshops, we started getting good in bed together. And we did what I like to call crossing the gasm chasm. You've heard that orgasm gap, the difference between
Mhm.
how easy it is for men to have, to achieve a successful climax from intercourse, where for women it's so much more difficult. And like everyone, like all the couples that I talked to over the last 15 years of working with hundreds of thousands of people from around the world of all ages and all cultures, I realized that when a couple has trouble with orgasmic issues in their sex life, when she's having trouble orgasming, she thinks it's her problem, and so does he.
Mm.
Because it's so easy for him. What's her problem?
Mhm.
How come she
Right.
can't do it? Right? Women, we take on the burden of it. Um, well, I was able to cross the gasm chasm because it's simply a learned skill. I spend so much of my time just explaining to people that you just have to learn how to do it. It's not that you can't do it. It's just that you haven't learned how to do it yet. And it's not even hard. And it's a lot of fun. The home play is good play.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
we started having incredible sex together. And we thought Tim had just sold his company, and I had just shut down one of mine and sold it off. It was a kind of a trough time, and in the Silicon Valley, and it was the .bomb era instead
Oh
of the
yeah.
.com
Mhm.
era. We'd had the
Mhm.
.com, and then we'd have the .bomb, and we were thinking about what we were going to do next. And I said, "Hey, why don't we?" And believe it or not, we launched a podcast network. Why don't we do podcasts and bring all this great sex workshop stuff onto podcasts and let people from all over the world access these couples techniques and ways of learning and experiencing great sex together, because so much of the sexuality that we learn from the media and pornography is just degrading to women. It doesn't take into account at all women's arousal, the way we need to become aroused, etc. And good sex techniques are very, very learnable and important.
Mm.
And
Mm.
most people are just the blind leading the blind in the dark of their bedrooms.
Mm.
And what I love about it is that I spent the first decade developing what I like to call little hinges that swing big doors, really simple things that I could teach people how to do that would make amazing breakthroughs in their sex life. And then I realized all the techniques in the world are no good if you can't talk to each other in the bedroom.
Uh-huh.
So
Yep.
then I started with bedroom communication skills. And when I reached out to the two of you and said, I would like to be on your show, so thank you for having me,
Mhm.
I talked to you about the sexual soulmate pact, which I hope
Which
we'll
is
eventually
we're
get into.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're gonna ask you about that. I want to
yeah,
pick up on something you've said. A couple things you've already said. You
great.
talked about that distinction. The language you're using is between just having sex and making love.
Yes,
And in my book, in Reigniting the Spark, what I talk about, I sort of divide it into three levels. I talk about plain old sex, good sex, and sacred sex.
yes.
And so, I'm thinking in similar terms, but I'm curious, how do you distinguish that? What would you say are the hallmarks of making love as opposed, in your language, of making love as opposed to just having sex?
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting. I'm sure you're aware of David Snarch as well, Dr. David Snarch. He
Yeah,
says there's three kinds
absolutely.
of sex too.
Yeah.
And I know I was looking at the difference between what you say and what he said as well. He says there's like the individual two people who are basically using friction is how I would define it, where it's kind of like you're getting off and your partner's getting off, but you're really not connected. Then
Hmm.
the second tier for him is the connection where you're actually feeling each other, where there's a real circuit between you and presence and awareness and connection. And that's what I really spend my time doing, is teaching
Yeah.
people how to go from friction to connection.
And that's pretty much what I'm calling good sex. I think he goes then into wall
Exactly.
socket sex, right? He elevate. I think that was, if I'm remembering right, that's his term. It's like you're so plugged in, it's just electrical.
Yes, I
Uh,
love that.
yeah.
And then his number three, which is interesting, is role play, which I think is, he says it goes from, the friction to the wall plug to the role play.
Uh,
And I think role play is good. What I spend a lot of time doing is talking to couples about how to, basically hot monogamy, how to keep your sex life interesting. The fact that you need the security and safety to feel comfortable, but if you don't have the novelty and variety, no desire develops.
mhm.
And I talk to people a lot about things like fantasy and role play and sex toys and sex positions and new locations and learning orgasm techniques together and things like that. Couples that are learning together are keeping that kind of teenager, begin as a beginner, new relationship energy stoked,
Mhm.
which is so important, and learning how to make love, which is what I think is people can procreate pretty easily, but making love, transforming that having sex into making love, the making love piece is what I would maybe call embodied sex,
Mhm.
the eye connection, the heart connection, the limbic system connection, getting into a conjoined trance state, which is where you go with sacred sexuality,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
two become one and you can touch source or Gaia or God or whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
So I tend to not spend my time in the tantric sacred world. What I'm still trying to do is get a guy to connect his genitals to his heart
Mhm.
for a good start, right? And to
Yes, indeed.
slow way down because he's testosterone laden and he's ready to go. And he's got these wonderful erectile chambers that fill up with blood, like boom, hemodynamics, where I've lately been talking about our female genitals as English muffins with lots of nooks and crannies that the blood has to seep into, and it just takes a little longer. So
Uh-huh.
if our male-bodied partners realize that they're just always not always, but for the most part in the big bell curve of human sexuality, ahead of us in their arousal, and they can turn around and come get us and take us into our arousal instead of feeling like we don't want them or they're rejected or what
Mm.
have you. I, I really spend a lot of time teaching people across the gender spectrum how the female body, the XX chromosome human, needs to be aroused in an
Mhm.
entirely different way. And
It's interesting with respect to a lot of the stuff you're talking about, to be able to develop those skills. And I'm thinking again of Schnarch, because one of the things he points out is that requires maturity. I think
yes,
I often quote this. I read it in one of his books, that when he'll speak to a crowd of people and he'll say, "At what age do you think men and women respectively reach their sexual peak?" And the stereotypical responses are, "Well, men in their
18,
20s, women in their
35.
30s or
Yeah,
40s, whatever it might be." And he says, "No, I think both men and women reach their sexual peak in their 60s and 70s," which,
agreed.
and clearly he's not talking about hormone levels there,
Right.
or sexual gymnastics.
Yes.
He's talking about the maturity to be able to tolerate the anxiety of actually being honest and hearing your partner being honest.
Yes.
which, is a lot. Maybe that's a great segue into your sexual soulmate pact, which, because I think it requires all of those skills to be able to pull that off. Could you
It
tell us
does,
about
and I really agree with you that that you start to hit your stride sexually in your 60s. And one of the areas, it's interesting, I have a three-legged stool that is my platform, if you will, of how I like to approach helping people have great sex and intimacy together. One is all the orgasm techniques, male and female orgasm techniques. How does the body work? I'm currently working on a series that is the 20 kinds of male and the 20 kinds of female orgasm. And people are like, there's 20? Like
20?
maybe for
That's
women,
what
but
I'm
not for
thinking.
Whoa.
men.
20?
Men, they have 20? And I'm like, yeah, because of course we have the same parts arranged in different order. So I'm working on that. And so technique is fantastic. But after the first decade of teaching people technique, I realized that it was actually communication in the bedroom behind closed doors that was the most important thing, that without it, you really could, all the technique in the world mattered not. And so I started to develop my communication techniques, and the sexual soulmate pact is kind of my technique of the technique of the techniques. It's the best thing I've ever created, and I'm going to tell it to you right now. And you can download it at sexualsoulmatepact.com. It's very helpful to print it out and read it together or read it separately and discuss it as partners and enter into this agreement together. Because what it does is it essentially negates the fears that people have and the objections that they have and the obstacles that they have to speaking up. So I'm going to return to that. But the third leg of the stool, so one is technique, one is communication. The third leg of the stool is ageless sexuality. How do we keep, because you said this in one of your recent podcasts, you said, one of the biggest stumbling blocks that people don't think about is when sex hurts. If there's erectile dysfunction of the male or female, she can't even feel her pleasure anymore. Not just that she can't get lubricated or that she has painful sex, but sometimes women have as much sensation loss as men do. And men are renowned in their 60s for having the beginnings of significant sensation loss. So they go from being premature ejaculators to delayed ejaculators, and they can't quite get there, and they wear their wives out, and they're like, I don't really want to have sex with him because he can't ever get to a climax. So there are a lot of problems. And what I do is I teach people the modalities, treatments, techniques that actually reverse the issues of aging and atrophy of our genitals.
Mm.
And there are some wonderful things out there. So I've gotten really into the health side of intimacy because I find that people don't even know that these solutions exist.
Do you
So when
know
you're, yeah,
do you know the work of Batsheva Marcus? Have you
I
heard of
know
her?
that you had, is it a her? Yeah,
Yes.
you had mentioned that segment in one of the segments I was listening to of yours, and I made a note to go back and listen to it, but I
Yeah.
haven't yet.
It's directly what you're describing. She's a sex therapist at what is it?
Maze.
Maze Women's Health Center in Manhattan. She's one of the
And we've
co-founders
had
of
her
it.
as a guest on our show.
And
So.
we happen to know her through one of our kids, actually. And she's known as the Orthodox sex guru. She's grown up Orthodox Jewish, and which is fascinating because she will work she works with a wide variety of women, but among the people she works with are women from the Hasidic communities. The rabbis will send them to her because they know she's modern Orthodox, but she's at least sympathetic to Orthodox Judaism. But she talks a lot about. In fact, when I wrote my book, she was one of the people who read it, and she was the most helpful reviewer because instead of just saying, "Oh, that's nice," she tore me a new one. Said,
Ah,
"You're leaving something really important out." And the stuff that she was really calling me on was, she warns people in her book. Her book is called Sex Points. I don't mind shouting out a
great.
plug for that. She warns people against therapists who say it's all about relationship,
Uh-huh.
because there's all this health stuff that, sometimes what you need to do is go check with the doctor, and exactly the stuff you were talking about. Maybe you need some treatments in your genitals,
Yeah,
maybe you need to use dilators if you're a woman. Maybe you need some, testosterone for both men or women.
exactly.
Those are all possibilities. I know you talk about something that isn't in the hormone realm, which,
I do, a nitric oxide,
yeah.
right. I own a supplement company in addition to publishing the passionate lovemaking techniques. And I started that company because so many women say, oh, I have low libido, it's my hormones. And I'm like, It actually isn't your hormones. You'd be surprised. Now, if you have thinning of the vaginal mucosa, that's a dip in estrogen, and that can be handled in many different ways. That can be handled with or without hormone replacement. But we lose blood flow. I mean, that's why PDE5 inhibitors work so well, Viagra and the like, because they get that blood flowing into those erectile chambers. But there isn't a homologous option for women, but there is, and it's nitric oxide. And the vagina doesn't have a gland. It has to lubricate through the blood plasma. So if we can't get the blood to the pelvic bowl because we're starting to get vascular disease as we age, we don't have any lubrication. So nitric oxide supplements are very, very important for anyone over 40. By the time you're 50, you have half the nitric oxide production you did when you were in your 20s. And if you're a mouth breather at night, you've got even less, because most of your nitric oxide is actually made in the turbinates of your nasal passages. While you sleep at night, it replenishes your stores. I've been mouth taping lately, and I've been taping my husband's mouth shut at night too. We go to bed, we like tape our mouth, and we're like, no, no, honey, love you, no, love you. But the mouth taping has been a godsend for both of us, feeling restored and refreshed, and getting rid of the snoring, not waking up at night. It's quite an interesting and wonderful thing. Who thought? I recently wrote an article, and I was like, the one weird sex. I hate doing the one weird sex tip or whatever, but I was like, this one truly earned the one weird sex tip, which was, if you want more erection, both clitoral erection and penile erection, tape your mouth shut at night. You'll get more nitric oxide. Who knew?
Well, I've just been very impressed in watching all your stuff. Is
Thanks,
how you really have looked at the science behind it. And you're very conversant in like all parts of the anatomy and what's going on. So that's one of the things that impressed us when we were watching your stuff.
Thank you.
Is you know your stuff, so it's.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm an anatomy geek.
Mm-hmm.
And the more that you understand your own anatomy and your partner's anatomy, the more pleasure you can deliver to it, and the more you can keep it healthy. So I really do think good sex starts with understanding one's anatomy and its potential. Requirement for a good orgasmonaut is know your genital system.
Indeed.
So I didn't answer your question, Bruce, about the sexual soulmate pact. So we might as well pick up there. Does that sound good?
Go for it. Yep.
All right, good. So the first thing that I like to do is I like to explain that the sexual soulmate pact is a technique that has two parts to it. One of them is, I call it reporting in from your animal. And the second is, I just call it thank you. Those are the two components to it. And it basically gets around a lot of the things that hold us back. Number one, a lot of people think, well, I don't know what I want. I just know what I'm getting, isn't it? I don't want to hurt my partner's feelings. When I give them feedback, they contract, it ruins the mood. Mm-hmm. I have trouble forming my words during sex. I'm very shy. I don't like to say those things. I don't want to talk about it. Those are really the three big ones. And so the reporting in from my animal, I basically start out by having you imagine the tree of life with all of the animal kingdom on it, whether it's the bacterial, the bacteria and viruses of the world, to the dolphins and whales and the ponies and the puppies and the kitties and the lions and the great apes. And you go out on the branch of the tree with the great apes, and there's the orangutans and the bonobos and the chimpanzees and the Homo sapiens. And that's us. We're not sitting at the base of the tree eating an apple looking up at the tree of life with all the animal kingdom. We're on the branch with the monkeys. And we forget this in our lofty visions of ourselves as Homo sapien. We forget that what we actually live in is an animal body. Not only an animal body, but an animal body subject to the vagaries of, how well did we sleep last night? Did we get up 5 times and pee in the middle of the night because we don't tape our mouth? How much sugar and crap did we eat yesterday? Where are we with regard to our hormones? Are we low on our hormones? Are we in that crabby time, or are we in the, even after menopause, women are still running on a 28-day cycle. We still, even if we don't ovulate and menstruate, we still have our 5-day horny window. So how do we take advantage of the times that we're in them, and how do we leverage the times that we're not to give our bodies what they need to become aroused and turned on? We've labored under the patriarchal view of sexuality for the last, 30,000 years, and maybe more like 300,000 years. And now we're moving into an understanding of what women need to become aroused and what our arousal profile and our arousal ladders look like. So understanding that every day we're going to want something a little different. It's so confounding to the masculine. He's like, well, the last time we had sex and I did that little thing with my fingers, she went crazy. It's not working this time. Why?
And you know what men will do? We'll keep looking for her user's guide, and we seem to have lost it, you know. And I will often actually point that out. I mean, with respect to men learning how to get feedback from women, I will often point out, because yeah, I'm sure you know, a lot of guys will be offended. You know, that's as opposed to hearing it as this incredible gift she is giving you. She's giving you the keys, dude. You know,
Yes.
be grateful and go for it and do what she says, because you're both gonna be a lot happier. You know.
Well, and I feel bad for guys in a way because, all guys want to do is win. They just want the win, and they're up for the challenge, and they'll sacrifice their pleasure to give their woman pleasure. They really will.
Mhm.
I mean, a lot of times men are depicted as selfish, and I don't think that's true. I think it's more that it's that they just aren't getting any guidance, and yet they often, because of testosterone and its beautiful rose colored glasses, testosterone does make men think they're better in bed than they are. So there is that concern about if she tells him something and his ego contracts, it's not worth it for her. She'll just suck it up.
Mhm.
But what I say to women is every time you make love and it's not great for you, you're just adding one more brick in the wall of your future sexless marriage.
Mhm.
Don't do it. I love Brad Blanton and his radical honesty. And what you find when you begin to get honest, and I don't have to tell you this, but we're talking to your listener, is that your relationship becomes so much more interesting and juicy, and you learn so much more about yourself, and you develop yourself as a person when you begin to speak honestly rather than hiding or
Yeah.
walking on eggshells or withholding or doing all the little tricks that we've been trained by our society to do for the
Mhm.
stupidest reasons ever.
Well, and we do
So
it also because it's terrifying sometimes, to be honest. If you're worried
terrifying.
you're going to rock the boat. And
Yes.
that's one of the big theses of my book, is that idea. Well, actually, Judy's got a great question for both of us, so we can postpone it to that. But let's keep going on the sexual soulmate pact for now, and we'll come back to
So
it.
the understanding that we live in animal bodies and they change all the time, and that yesterday when we made love, I wanted you to hold me and pet me like I was a kitty cat, and today I want to ravish you, and I'm an entirely different person. And that's one of the beautiful things about being human, is that the wide sexual expression that we can embody, but it's also one of the confusing things. And so when a couple gets on the same page and they're like, okay, just tell me what your animal's telling you she needs, and I will support that need in this moment. Um, because it's not that I'm doing anything wrong, it's that you're just different today than you were yesterday. I get that now. So there's no such thing as failure. It's just feedback. And I get hungry for your feedback because now you're giving me what I need to win, to do a
Mhm.
great job for you.
Exactly.
When I can get a couple to trust that, and here's how I get them to trust it, because the first time she says, can you go harder, softer, lower, to the right, up and down? I don't like that. You're pulling my hair, whatever it might be. And he contracts out of reflex. He has to correct that contraction by saying, thank you,
Mhm.
baby. Got it. I hear you. How's this? Tell me more. She needs to be encouraged and called toward, called forth by his masculine sexual leadership. When she knows that he can withstand, not only withstand, but wants her feedback, and that it's not her, it's the body that she lives in that she really has very little control over. That's the thing. My husband and I, Tim, we call each other Team Sweetie. We're together in dealing with my animal body and his at times, though the masculine tends to be more steady state because he has a daily dose of testosterone. So if he woke up every morning with an erection, which I hope he has, because that's a good sign of health, he would love nothing more than for her to hop on top of him, get herself off, have incredible pleasure, and go make him breakfast. You know, like that would be perfection for him. But it seldom works that way because she's not ready to go like he is. So he has to understand it's not that she doesn't like him. It's not that he's not turning her on. It's not that she doesn't want sex. It's that she's just so far behind him. He has to turn around, slow down, come back and get her and help her get to the state that he's in. And that is one of the most common misunderstandings that ruins marriage, is that he takes her lack of sexual desire as personal rather than as biologic.
Oh, yeah.
And if I can teach guys anything, it's that zone theory. You've got to warm us up from the outside in. Don't grab our breasts. Don't grab our crotch. You want us to grab your penis. We'll do it. But we're not ready. Even if we're touching your penis, we're not ready to go. You've got to help us get what I like to call up on an orgasmic plane. You've got to help us get into our turn on. And so when
One
the
of the
couple
things,
realizes,
well, something you mentioned in one of the things we saw was, look out for the golden rule. And that's a great example of it. There's so many guys, couples I work with, and the guys will, the woman will say, I keep telling him, for crying out loud, don't grab my ass. That is not sexy. Don't just grab something. And the guy can't, because that's what he wants her to do. Yes. And he can't figure out that what he wants is not what she wants. And of course, yes, the golden rule is the problem there.
Yes, it is. Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you, except for sex.
Well, and
and then you use the platinum rule: treat your partner the way they want to be treated.
See, there's the Jewish. Well, yes, exactly. There's the Jewish concept of the golden rule, which is actually stated in the negative, which, from a Jewish perspective, tends to be. I've always looked at it, rather chauvinistically, I suppose. I've always looked at it as a much better way of stating it, rather than saying do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It's no. What is hateful to you, don't do to others. You can be pretty sure if you hate it, it's not going to be good for someone else either. Now, there's probably exceptions to that, but not nearly as many as there are in terms of the golden rule.
I agree.
The Christian version of the golden rule.
Yep. Yeah. So just to finish off the pact, the first part is understanding that you're in an animal body, that you're different every day, and that you have to, this is the other thing that women struggle with is, I don't know what I want. I just know what I'm getting isn't it. So I'm not going to correct him because I don't know what I want. But I explain to women, yes, you do. You do know. Your body knows what it wants. A lot of people think that sex comes from out there, that I don't know what I'm doing, or I don't know what I want. But you could never read an erotic novel, never watch pornography, never see a movie, never talk to a friend about sex. And yet, left to your own devices and behind closed doors with your partner, if you listen to her, she knows. We live in desire. Desire is within us. All the orgasms are already there. They need to be let out. They need to be acknowledged. Some women like to hear it as intuition because they're in touch with their intuitive self. And so I can say, listen to your body. I can say, get in touch with your body sensations. I can say, do body scanning. I can say, hear or connect with your intuition, whatever way. And you might have a couple of good ideas of other ways that I could say that too. I'm open to something that might be coming up for you right now about how to get people to trust their wisdom, their body wisdom.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I'm always, one of my little shticks, I've been doing this long enough that I have shticks,
I like a shtick.
Yeah. One of my shticks is tolerate the anxiety as opposed to trying to run from it, because that is the chief skill of intimacy, is to be able to, yes, you're feeling some anxiety, but you can be okay with that. Don't freak out. So if you can tolerate the anxiety without panic, you know, the 7 words of couples therapy in 7 words is be kind, don't panic, and have faith. The have faith part is really all about saying, very similar to what you were just saying. I would, if I wanted to fit it into that rubric, I would classify what you were just talking about, that sense that it is within you.
Yes,
That's a statement of faith
it
that
is.
says,
Mhm.
yeah, we are viable. Human beings are viable. The reality is right to be what it is. That's what I mean by faith. It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
religious faith, but that is the antidote to panic. So you're still going to have the anxiety because, you know, you're going to worry, wow, if I say something to my partner that he or she, like you say, if a woman says something and the man contracts, that's a scary moment for a lot of people. They just freak out. It feels like abandonment. If you don't freak out but can tolerate that, and that's exactly what you were saying, really, hang in there. The man's job is to realize, okay, maybe you're feeling like you're contracting, but hang in there, thank her for it, you know,
Right.
exactly the stuff you were saying. That
Yes.
is how you manifest that sense of faith, so you don't panic, and
Yes.
that's how you can actually experience intimacy.
And
Yeah,
I
I
wanted
really
to
like that.
get the two of you a little thing here. You know, in Bruce's book, he talks about the death spiral for passion. In some
Yes.
of your work, you talk about the upward spiral for pleasure. So
Yes.
I want to get the two of you talking about your spiral. So Bruce, why don't you tell us first what your death spiral for passion is, and then Susan, you can talk to us about your upward spiral.
Yeah, and look, I have to say, boy, it sounds like such a downer, doesn't it? You know, I'm the pessimist here, apparently, you know, because I wrote a whole chapter on the death spiral for passion. But I'm glad I'm glad you're going to be the antidote to that. You know, yeah, the death spiral. It's really talking about that phenomenon when you have what we all want is stability and intimacy. We need them both. We need them both equally. They're both really important. And the interesting thing is the skills of stability are so different from the skills of intimacy. The skills of stability are about avoiding anxiety. A good, you know, legitimate thing to do. That's those same animal bodies that want intimacy also don't want to freak out. You know, we want to avoid anxiety. Anxiety is a message that says something's wrong. So what tends to happen in a stable couple is they will avoid rocking the boat. And that has the effect of their, like in the sexual domain, certainly, there they are in bed. And one or the other is thinking, gee, could we try something different? But I'm not sure how you're going to feel about that. Or, you know, the woman saying, you know, classically, the woman say, thinking to herself, I don't like what you're doing right now, but I don't want to say it because I might offend you. You know, I'm worried about the stability of the relationship. So the willingness, when people understandably decline to risk stability, that has the effect of shutting down intimacy. And I should shout out to Schnarch here again, because that is similar to one of his essential ideas too.
Mhm.
So that's the death spiral for passion. Now, of course, my antidote to that is, well, faith, so that you can do the very things you're talking about. So actually, why don't you tell us about the upward spiral for pleasure? Because I think
Yeah.
that's dovetail nicely.
The upward pleasure spiral, you know, I talked about it at the beginning of the show in a way, because what I talked about was learning new things together. When you begin as beginners together, you're not really, mistakes can be made.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a notion called erotic play dates. And one of the practices that we teach, one of the orgasm skills that we teach is a practice called expanded orgasm. My husband and I, Tim, have had an expanded orgasm practice for 17 years now. And it's basically genital massage for her. It can be done to him as well. This particular practice is a clitoral stroking technique. And it's a very, very light stroke under the hood on the meat of the glands of the clitoris. Most women, if they can have an orgasm, they'll have one and then they're done, because they're getting overclocked, if you will. They're getting overstimulated and they can't achieve their orgasmic potential, which is essentially just to be in orgasm their entire life.
Yeah.
I'm orgasming right now. But the practice itself, there's 5 strokes. There's 3 opening strokes, what we call the bread and butter stroke, which is this very light stroke on the clitoral head under the hood. And then there's a closing stroke, a down stroke that kind of pushes the blood back into the body after it's gotten engorged and calms everything down and brings you back down, because you've got the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system and you're always toggling them. If you know what you're doing, you can achieve incredible orgasmic experiences in these conjoined trance states where you're connected together. One person's delivering, the other person's receiving, but you're riding it in that interplay where you're feeling each other. I'm feeling you, feeling me. You're feeling me, feeling you. You know, you're really one connected system. And to learn that, what we did was we broke it down into 21 erotic play dates. So each date that you have, and I'm a big proponent of scheduling play dates together,
That's,
erotic play
but Sheva
dates.
Marcus says the identical thing in her book, by the way, in Sex Point. She talks about you got to schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the problem is scheduling sex. Women don't want to schedule sex. They're like, oh, it's one more thing on my list. I don't want to do it. But if you say, I want to schedule an erotic play date with you, then she's interested, because that sounds more romantic, more fun, less pressure, less goal orientation. And so in this particular program, Expand Her Orgasm Tonight, that was created for me by one of my mentors, Dr. Patty Taylor, that teaches couples this clitoral stroking technique. We broke it down into these 21 fun things you could do so that you would essentially get all the facets of the limbic connection, the touching for rapture, the 5 strokes, what do you do when you're getting to the edge and you can't quite take it up to the next level? How do you find her spot when her spot moves around every time? How do you share your favorite frames after the date so you can learn what worked well? The best moment was when you did blah, blah, blah. Really? I didn't even realize I was doing that. That's interesting. So there's all these different techniques. So essentially the upward pleasure spiral is learning new skills all the time together, which gets you beginning as beginners, which saturates you full of new relationship energy, takes the performance pressure away, and brings in the fun. And it's just the absolute perfect thing. And I mean, I have tons of play date ideas. I've written 7 stimulating sex positions and come full circle and thrust in time. And I mean, I'm always a dirty talk book, and I'm always coming up with ideas for couples. You want to work on your dirty talk? Okay, let me tell you how to do genital worship. That's a really fun one. You can practice it with each other.
I
Here's 20
downloaded that book, by
things.
the way. Your freebie on Dirty Talk. I downloaded that. It was
Oh, you
great.
did?
I enjoyed
Yeah,
Oh, good.
that.
Oh, good. I'm glad you did. That was so kind of you. Yeah. So anyway, I think there's a never ending list of things you can learn to do together. And when you think about it that way, it does get you on the upward pleasure spiral. You start having breakthrough experiences. You start co-creating incredible amounts of pleasure together. And it takes it off of, well, the penis and vagina type of sex. But the caveat is, if you're a hetero-monogamous couple and you're not having orgasms from intercourse as the female, that's one of the things you should be working on right away, because otherwise you get those bricks in the wall of a sexless marriage, because you're not going to want to have intercourse if you're not having orgasms. And I'm talking about, you don't need to touch your vulva at all or use a toy or anything. Our vaginas are wrapped in erectile tissue. So if as women we can get engorged enough, penetration just makes us come automatically. It's not difficult. It's just slowing down and getting engorged, feeling comfortable. I have a couple of tricky techniques I give to people for free. They're on my website. So I think that's the most important thing with the upward pleasure spiral, is learning new skills together.
Mm-hmm. And the one thing I would note with respect to sort of joining, my death spiral for passion and getting people into that place of starting as beginners, as you said, that is an act of faith. What gets people to do that is enough faith to believe that, you mean this is learnable? You mean people can actually experience this kind of thing?
Yeah.
That's quite a leap for a lot of folks. When there's trauma involved, that often is a complicating factor. But to be able to make that leap of faith, that's what lets you do it. This might be a good time to go to a listener question, do you think?
I
What you
think
got,
it
dude?
is. And, when just listening to you talk from the beginning, the intro, it's like, oh my God, this letter could have been written by you back in the day, but you'll see what I mean in a minute. Okay, so Ellen writes, Dear Dr. Chalmer, Bob and I have been married for 27 years. We have 3 children, 1 in high school and 2 in college. We have a really good marriage. We share many of the same interests and hobbies. We enjoy traveling and cooking together. We go contra dancing. We play in a local orchestra. We are active in our church. But when it comes to sex, I have very little interest. Somewhere along the way, my sex drive has dwindled to the point where I don't care if I never have sex again. Bob has been very patient and understanding. Sometimes I give in just because I don't want to deprive him of sex, but I get no pleasure from it. He tries very hard to satisfy me, but I just don't have orgasms. I'm not sure if I ever did. When we first got together, we had a lot of sex and I enjoyed it, although I never had those waves and rushes you hear so much about. I did ask my doctor about it, and she said she could put me on hormones, but I'm not sure I want that. I don't want to feel like having sex is a chore, but that's what it seems like. I know some women say that their sex drive goes away during menopause, but that it comes back. I went through menopause 3 years ago, and it still hasn't come back. This has actually been going on for about 10 years. Bob says it's okay if I don't want to have sex. He doesn't want to pressure me into doing something I don't want to do. But I'm afraid if I don't, he'll look elsewhere. I'm really torn and I don't know if I should go on hormones or just pretend I'm enjoying it or see a sex therapist. I'm really not sure what to do next. Any advice? So we
I,
turn it over to you.
it's super easy.
Okay, Ellen, I hope you're listening.
Yes. Well, I am holding 3 things in my hands. Now you can't see it because you're probably listening to the podcast, but I'm holding 2 sex toys and a bottle of supplements. The first thing is that if you went on hormones, the hormone you really would want would be testosterone, not estrogen. If you're not having painful sex, which I didn't hear, then it's really a loss of testosterone. And it's actually, doctors call it scream cream. It's a little testosterone suspended in some shea butter or some kind of a cream that can be put intravaginally. And that does do a very nice job of giving you a little bit more desire. But what it also does is it gives you more confidence. You know, testosterone is the molecule of the balls. I mean, it gives you balls. So if you're feeling like you're losing your, your kind of your lust for life, generally, testosterone can be very good, but it's not necessary at all. The thing that I would do is I would take a nitric oxide supplement. I have my Flow nitric oxide supplement, which is it's made from organic fruit and vegetables. Most nitric oxide supplements are made with arginine, and they're made in big vats from corn syrup grown in pesticide-laden Chinese cornfields. And I don't like that. So this is actually made from watermelon, and people over 40 tend to be able to utilize and metabolize citrulline better than arginine. They're both amino acids. And so citrulline is named after the watermelon. Watermelon's called Citrullus vulgaris. So you could eat watermelon, but it's not the fruit, it's the rind actually where all the citrulline is. So taking a blood flow supplement will increase your vaginal lubrication, which will make you feel like you want more sex. Because when we're dry and not aroused, we're even further away from our desire. So and it's good for your heart. It's good for your cognitive function. I mean, it's good for your vascular system in general. So it's a great thing to do, and it's over the counter. So I always tell everybody, start with nitric oxide. The second thing that I do is I say, begin with solo pleasuring. And there's a particular vibrator that I recommend for solo pleasuring. And there's 2 sizes to it. It's called the Lady Bi or the Miss Bi. And essentially it's from a company called Fun Factory. They're like the Porsche of vibrators. They're a German company.
Yeah.
And they have 2 motors. The bi means 2 in German. And the Lady Bi has a small intravaginal piece that also has a vibrator that vibrates the G area up in the roof of the vagina, as well as the deeper area called the anterior fornix in the vagina. So you're getting vaginal stimulation, which brings blood flow to the vaginal mucosa and also increases lubrication. But you have an external vibrator, and it's a flat pad that goes onto the clitoral structure. So not just the clitoral tip, but the clitoral shaft and the clitoral arms. And then I also recommend running the vibrator on the outside of the vulva, on each side of the opening to your vagina. It's called your vestibule, is your pubic hair. And under the pubic hair is where the clitoral legs are, which are called vestibular bulbs. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to get a lot of blood flow into your vulva, not just stimulating the tip of the clitoris with the vibrator, but actually vibrating inside, vibrating around the outside, vibrating across the top, the mons. You want to get it stimulated. You want to get it feeling very fluid and juicy and lush. And ultimately, what will happen is you'll begin to have orgasms from the pleasure of the vibrator. And I'd recommend that what you do is you use fantasy while you're pleasuring yourself. When you use fantasy, and it takes a while to kickstart the fantasy engine. As you've been, not thinking sexually and feeling this performance anxiety and guilt instead of desire and lust, you need to flip that. So as you're out in the world, I want you to be looking for opportunities for fantasy. A sexy guy you see, some story that you think of.
I just want to throw in one thing as you're going, which
Yeah.
is the tricky part I'm imagining for Ellen. We don't know her, this is a letter we got, but we don't know her. The tricky thing for her is all of these techniques are wonderful if she starts them. And the tricky part for her is she doesn't seem to have a desire to start them. Do you know what I mean? I think
Oh, I
that's a
think she
sticking
has a
point for a lot of
desire. I
women.
think she feels badly
She does
that
feel badly
she's
that she
not
does.
giving her husband the sex that he wants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
But
she's missing the libido part.
But that's what Susan
Yeah.
is trying to
No,
get her
yeah, I
there.
mean, if she will do the things you're saying,
yeah.
indeed, it sounds like that will start that lovely upward spiral.
Yeah.
And the thing I wonder sometimes with some of the folks I talk to is it's for some women who are saying things similar to Ellen, she feels bad about it, but it also there's a quality of it's almost aversive. The concept of her masturbating would feel like I don't want to do that.
Yeah, well, she better.
Well, yeah, clearly that's the advice
It's
she's
the
getting.
trick.
Yeah.
She's looking for the trick.
Mhm.
What can make me want to want my husband?
Right.
Mhm.
And what I'm saying is self-pleasuring is the trick.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you get the juices running, you got to get the juices flowing.
Mhm.
And once you get the juices flowing, your desire will begin to come back. And the masturbating yourself, when you say to your husband, I'm going, I want to want you, and I'm going to begin a solo pleasuring, and it's not going to replace our intimacy. It's going to support me in wanting to be intimate with you.
Mhm.
It's also going to help her achieve orgasm from intercourse, which is why she got into this situation in the first place, is that she's not orgasming. So
Mhm.
how long do you want to have sex if you're not orgasming? Apparently, that's about how long. She went longer than most women. I only made it 11 years. So solo pleasuring with the vibrator will get her vulva turned back on again. Fantasy will connect it for her so that it gets her going and gets everything really moving for her. And then when she has intercourse with her husband, I recommend a different vibrator. I want her to get 2 vibrators. The other one that I want her to get is this, which is called the Digit, Digit, like a finger, from Hot Octopus. And the reason that I like this, it's a little bullet vibe, but it
It's a
looks like
great
a
name.
ring pop. It looks just like a little ring pop. It slides on your finger like a ring, and you can hold it. And what I like about this particular vibrator is it has a very nice, strong vibe. And it has a very small size, very low profile. And I want her to use lubrication, and I don't want her to buy a lube at the drugstore. I want her to just get organic avocado oil, organic sweet almond oil, something like that. I always say, if you wouldn't put it in your mouth, you shouldn't put it on your vulva, because it's the same blood system and mucosal system. It absorbs right in all the chemicals that they have to use to make lubricants pass FDA approval, they have to have preservatives in them. And the preservatives are basically toxic crap that's going to suppress your hormones and suppress your neurotransmitters and make it even harder to have good sex. The lube business is a disaster when all you need is a good organic oil that you could drink or make salad dressing out of. Use that, because you got to get things slippery and moving. And what I like about this digit from Hot Octopus, with 2 S's, Hot Octopus, is that it slips between the couple very well. So she can begin to give herself clitoral vibration stimulation while her husband is penetrating her. And that way, that's going to help her cross the gasm chasm. She's going to be able to have orgasms. So she's going to learn how to come herself in her solo play. Then she's going to, and couples do a terrible job of using sex toys during lovemaking. It's one of the things they rate themselves the worst at, which means do it. It just get the vibrator and figure it out and do it together. Why would you not use a tool to get a job done? You don't hammer nails in with your hand, right? And using vibrators doesn't it doesn't ruin your orgasmic expression. It improves it. It doesn't ruin it, like, oh, if I use a vibrator during sex, then I won't be able to have an orgasm without it. Nope, that's not true at all.
Parenthetically, there are young folks who think using lube is a bad sign, which I think is just an awful thing where they get that idea, as if the need, that, oh no, if she needs lube, there's something wrong with her. She's not really turned on or something, which just always strikes me as,
that's the lack of sex education in our society.
Yeah.
I know. All right. We have be afraid of semen instead of semen is fantastic for you. I mean, I wish we were so much more sex positive about things, but that's the trick. The trick is just giving yourself orgasms and getting the systems going and flowing again. And once they're going and flowing, you'll start having intercourse, you'll add the vibrator, then pretty soon you won't even need the vibrator. And also making sure that your partner is spending a lot of time kissing you and stroking you and touching your whole body, giving you foot rubs and neck rubs and back rubs and vulva rubs, giving you what we like to call a yoni massage, yoni being a tantric word, a tantric lovemaking word for a female's genitals. Lingam is the male penis, so yoni and lingam. So giving you yoni massages, letting him orally pleasure you. He's not going to be great at it at first because you haven't been doing it you don't have any skills. Mm-hmm. But you can learn how to have orgasms from manual stimulation, from oral stimulation, and from a penis inside you. And it all starts with getting it all moving with the tools.
Mm-hmm. Well, I hope that is helpful to Ellen. I'm sure if she's listening, she has been edified.
Yay! Go, Ellen. Let us know how it goes.
Yes. And not merely edified, but I hope kind of excited, which is really, that's what it takes, is kind of to be willing to take that leap, and say, okay, I'm actually going to try something, as opposed to just feeling like, oh no, there's nothing I can do.
And I like what you said, like getting these toys, letting her husband know it's not just for her, it's for him as well. Mm-hmm. That's something that will improve for both of them. So
one of the things that I really like is to have my husband hold me. I lean back against him and he strokes my hair and kisses my head in the back, and he plays with my breasts and my nipples while I use my vibrator on my vulva and have orgasms. And I love him to tell me what he loves about me. So he basically just whispers in my ear. He tells me how adorable I am, how cute I am, how pretty I am, what a great cook I am, how sexy I am, how much he loves me, how much he adores me, how much he loves living with me. And he just goes on and on and on and on, telling me how awesome I am and how adorable I am while he's playing with my nipples and my breasts and I'm having orgasms. It's awesome.
Never gets old.
I think everybody wants your husband now.
I know. He's never leaving me, so don't bother.
I got to keep her here too.
Yeah, so guys listening, take heed, right? This is
absolutely
stuff for guys to pay attention to.
And that's the type of things that men and women need to hear. So thank you.
Yeah.
You're
And
welcome.
this has been delightful, Susan.
It
Thank you
has
very
been
much for
fun.
doing this.
It's just been
Thank you.
wonderful having you here, and we're thrilled to have you, and we've enjoyed watching your stuff and your videos and reading your books. So thank you so
And
much.
could you go ahead and give a shout out to your websites, and
Sure.
and we'll put that when we post this as well. We'll put it in
We'll
the
put a link
information.
to it.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah. Well, the Sexual Soulmate Pact is at sexualsoulmatepact.com. I want you to get that and download it, because all the other stuff I told you isn't going to do anything if you can't ask for what you want and know how to listen to your body and have your partner love you asking. So that's the number one thing. And then if you want to find all of my thousands and thousands of articles on any topic around sex you could possibly imagine, that's at personallifemedia.com. My hundreds of videos that Judy's been talking about are at
They're
betterlover.com.
wonderful. They're wonderful.
I dress up in goofy costumes and teach people how to have hot sex. And you can follow me on Instagram at Susan Bratton. That's a little bit more the personal side of things. I just post cute pictures of myself there.
And I
That's
love your
me.
costumes.
They're fun, aren't they?
They are.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you both.
I hope you enjoyed that interview with Susan as much as we enjoyed interviewing her. And thank you for listening.
And we would love to hear from you, of course, comments on that interview, comments on anything, and also suggestions for topics for us to do and suggestions for people for us to interview. That could include yourself, by the way. So if you want to email us, you can just email me, Bruce at brucechalmer.com, or you can visit my website, brucechalmer.com, and that's where, if you go to the podcast tab, you will, first of all, have access to all of our previous, direct or indirect access to all of our previous episodes. And also you'll have access to a scheduler if you want to actually schedule a time for us to interview you. That's there too. And in the course of doing that, we'll be asking you what might make you a good fit for our program. So we will be happy to hear from you.
And if you have questions that you'd like us to address on the air, use those same email addresses.
Yes, exactly. Bruce at brucechalmer.com. Yeah, questions just like the one from Ellen in the interview that you just saw. Exactly. And just another word about the book. Don't forget about the book, Reigniting the Spark: Why Stable Relationships Lose Intimacy and How to Get It Back. Available on paper, available on Kindle format from Amazon, and also available as an Audible book. And I was the narrator, and so you get to hear me read it as well. So, until next time,
Remember, be kind
don't panic.
and have faith.